In today's video, we will look at how can we use GitHub Copilot to implement an end-to-end list management service wherein you can add, remove, update, and even write link queries in a list using GitHub Copilot. So here we have the Visual Studio. Let's quickly create one console application. I'll call it as GitHub Copilot.list.demo. Next, I'll take whatever is the default and go ahead and create. So as we discussed, we will look how to create a list and various methods that we typically write to manipulate a list, right from adding an item, remove, and search and find. So to begin with, you could go ahead and directly ask or write request GitHub Copilot generate the code from order entity to order service. But uh, we discussed something called prompt engineering in the previous videos. So prompt engineering is the approach where you give additional information to Copilot before you request it to generate the code so that the code which is generated is more aligned and relevant to what you're looking for. So how do you do is one simplest way is to write comments. This program is to demonstrate order, uh, demonstrate list data structure in C# and how to implement basic list manipulation function operations. So now here we talked about how this program will help to show list and various other operations. Now let me go ahead and create a new class. I'll call it as order model. So what I basically need is a basic entity which will be a generate an order class with following with properties ID, name, date of order, amount, and status. So it would basically generate me the basic properties. As you notice, it has even identified the data types based on what we are given. Now let me ask you to generate a constructor. Let me generate a constructor with all the properties. And yes, so here I have the basic properties. Now let me go ahead and create the order service class. Order service class is the one which will have all the methods to add, remove, search, find, and manipulate the list. So let me generate order service class with list of order entities. So basically now I've asked you to create a basic code with an order service class which has a list of orders property. But if you notice here, GitHub Copilot has went ahead and generated the basic methods right from the constructor to initialize the order, to get all orders, get order by status, date, amount, name, and various other methods that it has found it relevant. Now you could choose to keep this, or you could as well remove and just add the functions you need. So what I'll do is I'll keep most of it order details, right? But I'll ask GitHub Copilot to give me another method, generate a method to search orders by name, ignore case sensitive, ignore and check for contents. So basically I'm trying to tell it, ignore any case, make it case insensitive, and check for contents rather than equals. So if you notice here, it has returned me a search by order. So Now it has really not found generated a very good code. If you see here, based on my comments, it has now taken a property called case sensitive and then two property called contains. Now this is not what we generally write, right? So we already know we basically do the condition, the case sensitiveness as part of the property. So now let me ask it again. Generate a search method with link you query uh, to search by name, ignore case sensitive, and contains check contains, right? So now this time I've asked you to generate a link you query. Now this time I have asked it to generate a link you query, and I was able to get a link you query which is much more in line to what we're going to create and we're going to write in a typical world. So now all I have to do now is go ahead and invoke these functions in here. So now I have this. Now this could be your console, your APIs, or any other endpoints that you want to return. So for now what I'll do is console. Let me just create an order service, ODS is equal to new, and let me create order service, or let me do this list of order, right? I'm initializing the orders, right? Now I can also say, generate random 100 orders with amount and varying status field. So what basically I'm asking to generate 100 orders with different amounts and different status. So if you see here, depending on the conditions or depending on the index, there is a logic being written. Again, you will be able to manipulate, modify this to give you the output you need. Now, if you say console.writeLine and orders dot get all order count, and now if you execute it, would basically give me the list of orders, which should be 100 here. So you have the 100 here. So what we have here is initial code that we were able to generate with GitHub Copilot, which would typically take few hours for us to write. Now, one thing to note here is this is not the final production ready code. For example, we do not have the exception handling, the checking the conditions and ensuring the data is valid. So all those logics either you can use GitHub Copilot to generate. So example, I could say check for input data validations, right? I can still ask this and it would generate me the basic logic that I typically would um, look at using. So example here, if ID is less than 0, if any of them are less than or equal to 0, it is throwing an invalid data. So you'll have to spend that extra time to make this code production ready. You could use GitHub Copilot for that as well, but the initial code that you get is something you can start off with and still save the time and have the time for you to focus on exception handling as well as even unit testing, right? In our future videos, we look at how to use GitHub Copilot to generate unit test cases, but this should give you an idea of how you can use GitHub Copilot to generate a list and manipulation functions depending on your business need and the requirement.